Pursuant to Internal Revenue Service guidance, be advised that any federal tax advice contained in this program is not intended to be used, and it cannot be used by any person or entity for the purpose of avoiding any tax penalties that may be imposed by the Internal Revenue Service or any other U.S. federal taxing authority or agency, or promoting, marketing, or recommending to another party any transaction or matter addressed in this show. The opinions expressed by the host and the guests are their own and may not be used as authoritative advice. Any use of this material without the written consent of the host is strictly prohibited.
You're listening to the IRS Radio Hour with your host, Attorney Stephen Leahy, on AM 560, The Answer. Tune in every week at 5 for an informative discussion about IRS obligations, credit card debt, mortgage default, collection activity, and how to resolve these legal issues using tax resolution, debt settlement, mortgage loan modification, foreclosure defense, and bankruptcy. Your host is Stephen Leahy, a Chicago attorney and the principal at OPM Tax Resolution and the law office of Stephen A. Leahy, PC. Stephen is the author of Deal with Your IRS Problems Today. IRS and debt issues are serious, but there is help. There are resolutions. So get ready and take notes during the IRS Radio Hour. And now, here's your host, Attorney Stephen Leahy.
Hello, Chicago. I am your host, Attorney Stephen Leahy, and this is the IRS Radio Hour on AM 560, The Answer. We help people dealing with IRS problems, audits, levies, liens, garnishments, collections, and payroll tax issues. We also deal with mortgage foreclosures, loan modifications, bankruptcy, and other debt-related issues. So if you have any of these problems, or if you know someone who does, you should contact me. And my phone number is 312-664-6649. When you make the phone call, you should ask for a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problems Today. Be happy to send you a free copy. I want to introduce my co-host, Jim Leahy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. If it's Sunday at 5 o'clock, it's the IRS Radio Hour. We do speak about the IRS and financial issues, but we also talk about local things because this is a local show, Steve being a local attorney. So we talk a little bit about the news of the day, a little bit of politics, some sports, some family. We try to bring the show up and so people know that we're from Chicago. Now, let's talk about what we talked about last week. We talked a little bit about last week. Your blog was who gets. I guess that's the question of our weekly question was who gets to write off the kids in case of a divorce. Mm-hmm. And then before that, we talked about the tax gap and the percentage of the people who pay it.
The tax gap.
And we thought it was, 86, 87% is pretty good, and the IRS doesn't think it's good.
That's bad.
But we spoke of that last week. And now...
what are we going to talk about this week?
There's some stuff in the news that we could talk about.
Well, let's talk about the news, yeah.
Last week we talked about them going after Walgreens, the way they go after everybody, and they put the strong arm on them. Walgreens, only following the law, was, of course, openly shunned and scorned by the president and Dick Durbin.
My opinion is it was probably a Walgreens strategy all along. Well, why shouldn't they get the same tax breaks that they offer for new companies like Boeing and these other companies that are coming to Chicago or Illinois? Why shouldn't Walgreens be given those same benefits?
Well, as we pointed out,
and now they will be.
Well, as we pointed out, their tax burden is a lot higher than it would be anywhere else.
Was that 38% here, 20% there? Huge numbers.
Well, I think that the climate in Illinois could change because we're in an election year. What else? Let's see what else happened. Well, I guess Walgreens has decided that they're going to stay. The Health and Human Services has now gone in front of Darrell Ice's committee and told them that they joined the line of lost emails.
We don't have the emails anymore.
Sorry, we just don't. It's just the easy thing to do, I guess, to just say, well, sorry. Of course, they didn't go to the archives the way that they're supposed to and tell them that these things.
And this is more of a higher official than just low level like Lois Lerner. Lois Lerner is not really a low level, but she's not as high.
She's a mid level.
That's right.
This was Sebelius.
In her office.
In her
office.
Sebelius, well, you're supposed to take So here they are. I guess it worked over there. Let's let it work over here. We don't have them. We lost them. Well, you just told us
to get healthcare.gov up, it costs $1 billion.
Billion.
$1 billion or more, because they haven't told us. That was before they had to do the big fix.
Yeah, well, we have no idea really what it costs. We still, because right now you find out that they don't tell you the truth on anything. You've got to pull their teeth to find out that there's anything going on.
That's right. And so they sat in front of the Congress and told them, "Oh no, we're ready to go." And I think the emails will show that they knew that they weren't ready to go.
Of course. And then with ISA now, it's just he's hitting the roof because of course here's another organization using the same.
Tactic,
the same tactic, saying, "Well, you should have had these in front of us a year ago."
You told us that they weren't going to go to jail for this.
Well, we were talking about the same thing. Somebody's got to go to jail. But if this was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, somebody would have. Today is the day, actually, 40 years ago, that Richard Nixon resigned. Friday is. I'm sorry, not Sunday.
The 8th,
The 8th of...
the 8th of August is always a special day for me. 888.
I have that shirt. It was the first... It wasn't really the first night game at Wrigley Field. It was the first attempt at a night game.
And Jim and I were out in front, out and back, I should say, at the first night game. I mean, the 8-8, but the first night game, 8-9. Jim and I were there.
That's right. I have a stack of those standing room only tickets.
I still have them. That's right. They're worth a lot of money today, Jim. They weren't a lot. I bought them. I thought that I could scalp them.
Yeah,
but nobody wanted them. Nobody wanted them.
Well, so let's talk about what we're going to talk about this week. We have the next segment is always about the blog. What's on the blog this week, Steve?
The blog this week is about installment agreements. And we're going to review one of the first shows that we had here. We talked about the 6 things you can do if you owe the IRS money. And that's one of the things. So we're going to review that a little bit, and then I'll talk about installment agreements.
And then we have a listener question. Oh, no, actually, I don't want to skip over our saga of the IRS, which is now expanding into different areas. And
we have new cast members.
Yeah, and we have this week I made sure that I got a clip of Dick Durbin and how this all started. And the reason why I read off all those names of the senators in the beginning of that segment.
Because now they're going to start targeting churches.
Well, yeah, that's a whole new part of
that's what I mean.
And also in the segment we're going to talk about, and that is a settlement supposedly at the IRS. Of course, we've talked about a lot about the IRS who make up rules as they go. They just change the rules without any kind of legislation or the
proper format, because there are rules on how they have to go about changing. They have to promulgate these rules, and they have to put them out for public opinion, and they have to be put before the public. And the IRS is doing all these interpretations without doing any of that.
As well, as we said, we can have a whole show, and one day we are going to have a whole show on how this is, on bringing everything together and tying all these loose ends together. And then after that segment, we are going into the listener question. And it's funny, what's the listener question?
Because the listener question has a lot to do with my blog this week, and it's why did they cancel my installment agreement? So there's lots of reasons why that could happen, and people are often surprised. So we'll talk about that.
Oh, good. No, I want to say a couple. Well, we have a couple of things that last week I'm in the American Legion post in the Lake Forest area, and we had Lake Forest Days. With a parade and a nice carnival and stuff afterwards. It was a great week.
Did you get on any rides, Jim?
I did not get on the rides. I worked the beer tent, so that means I can't drink. But
I was going to say, working the beer tent, does that mean you were behind it or in front of it?
I was actually behind it, and I was parched. But that's the first Wednesday of every August is Lake Forest Days. It's a big deal for the American Legion. That sponsors a lot of stuff in that town. They're very supportive. The American Legion puts up all the flags on Flag Day, 4th of July. We put flags out on Memorial Day. We sponsor the Cub Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts. We also have a baseball team. So I mean, there's a lot that we do for, and as I said, the town is very supportive of it.
I mention I have to mention the Cubs, because the Cubs are bringing up the youth It's a youth group movement.
What about Joey? Didn't your son play this week in the playoffs?
Well, he's there in the playoffs this week, and it's he doesn't think it's important because it's not a travel team, Jim. It's the house league, but it's still important. I think we had a great time. So they won last night, and so they're moving on.
Last night, you mean Thursday?
Thursday, that's
a couple days ago.
That's right, and they're moving on into the next round.
And we want to say hello to our sister who had a great party yesterday.
Because they had the hot dog stand, so we're going to have the hot dog stand
and 50 pounds of ribs. So, Steve, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how would they get in touch?
Well, they can find me on the web at chicagotaxteam.com. You can call me at 312-664-6649. You can send me a question at questions@irsradiohour.com.
If they called you at 664-6649-312, would they get a free book?
They could get, if they ask for one.
Would it be El Freebo?
El Freebo.
You could also go to where to watch us.
Well, at IRS Radio, it's not. It's at Chicago Tax Team. There's a clip up on the top that says IRS Radio Hour. So you can go there. You can watch video of it. So and these segments that
don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Stephen Leahy, a local Chicago attorney. I believe that God has given each of us unique abilities, and we are to use those abilities to help others. I have helped hundreds of Chicagoans recover from financial disaster, and if the IRS is threatening you with liens, levies, or garnishments, or you have years of unfiled tax returns, I want to help you. Compliance is the first step to resolving your IRS problem, and compliance begins with your 2013 taxes. Are you ready? If you call now, make an appointment, and visit my office for a free confidential consultation, we will complete your personal 2013 tax return at no charge, even if you don't hire me to resolve your IRS problem. Remember, I'm a local Chicago attorney. Investigate me. Simply Google Stephen with a V, Leahy, Leahy, reviews to find out what the Better Business Bureau and others have said. Or call me at 312-664-6649. Again, that's 312-664-6649. Visit us on the web at chicagotaxteam.com. Call me today.
Welcome back to the IRS Radio Hour with attorney Stephen Leahy. Stephen has helped hundreds of Chicagoans recover from financial disaster, and he wants to help you and your family. There are resolutions, and you will hear about all those resolutions during today's informative discussion on the IRS Radio Hour on AM 560 The Answer. Now, here's your host, attorney Stephen Leahy.
Welcome back. I am your host, attorney Stephen Leahy, and this is AM 560 The Answer, and this is the IRS Radio Hour. So to this segment, we're going to talk about my blog. And this week on the blog.
And what is on the blog this week?
This week on the blog, I wrote about installment agreements. So I think at one of the first shows, we talked about the 6 things you can do if you owe the IRS money.
After run, what is the second one?
They will catch you, so that doesn't work. Although that's the 6th thing is you can do nothing. And they can come after you.
They go to prison.
So the first thing you can do is you can write them a check and you can pay them. And if you can borrow money from someone else, you should. Pay the IRS. Don't owe the IRS. Owe somebody else, but don't owe the IRS. The second thing you can do is you can come up with an installment agreement.
Unless you got to go to your local juice dealer.
That might be better, though, Jim.
No, I'd rather go to the IRS.
I guess they won't break your legs.
That's true.
Okay. They'll hurt you hard, but they won't break your legs.
Right.
At least I have never heard. I've never heard that before.
As Captain Winters once said, pain builds character.
That's absolutely true. And the second thing you can do is you can come up with an installment agreement. And there's a couple of different types of installment agreements that we're going to talk about. I just want to review the other things you can do. The third thing you can do is you can be declared currently not collectible. Actually, the third thing you can do is you can do what they call an offer and compromise, and that's when the IRS agrees to a lump sum payment instead of what you owe them. And it's not really based on what you owe, but it's based on how much you can pay. And the fourth thing you can do is the currently not collectible. And that means, hey, IRS, I don't have any money at this time, so stop collecting, and maybe in a year or two I can pay you, and they'll leave you alone for a year or two, maybe more. The fifth thing you can do is you can file for protection under the bankruptcy laws. Taxes in bankruptcy are very complicated. So you need a specialized, I shouldn't say specialized because in Illinois you can't be a specialized attorney, but you need someone who's done this before, and it's important. And then the sixth thing, as I mentioned, is you can do nothing, and you can let the IRS have their way with you, and they will come after you and take your assets and hound you for the rest of your life.
Is this on? Have their way with you. I'm sorry.
Okay, so there's several different types of installment agreements. One's called a guaranteed installment agreement. One's a streamlined installment agreement. One's a partial pay installment agreement, and one's called a full pay installment agreement.
How would a full pay installment? That seems
that means I'm paying him in full, but I can't pay him right now. I'm going to pay him in installments. And the first one though I want to talk about is the guaranteed installment agreement, and this is for people who have tax that's less than $10,000. And as long as I've always paid my taxes on time for the last 5 years, and I haven't had another installment agreement, and I can pay them in 3 years, it's guaranteed. The IRS will say, fine, we'll set up a time. If I owe $9,999, right, it'd be $333 a month or whatever that is, or it would actually be $333 a month, and that would pay off my debt, and the IRS would agree to that. They don't have to go to their supervisor. They could say done deal, and it's guaranteed. The second type is what we call a streamline, and a streamlined it now is up to $50,000. So if I owe the IRS up to $50,000, there's a streamline process, and this has just changed last year, end of 2012. The IRS came up with a new program. The program, they call it the Fresh Start Program. And the Fresh Start Program changed the streamline from $25,000 to $50,000. And they changed how long they'll agree to take payments from 60 months to 72 months. So it makes them a lot more viable for people who owe the IRS money. It's not unusual for people to owe more than $25,000. And it is not unusual for people to owe more than $50,000. But if you owe less than $50,000, then the IRS has this streamlined process. And the great part about the streamlined process is they don't ask you for any information. So you don't have to give them your bank statements. You don't have to give them your pay stubs. They don't go through all your assets, and they don't really investigate you. What they say is, okay, this is how much you owe. We'll come up with a 72-month plan, and you pay us in 72 months. And that's a very, again, it's a good program. It encompasses a lot of people who owe the IRS money, and it makes it very much more easy and less expensive because I don't have to do the big investigation. The third type is called a partial pay, and this is a type that a lot of people get into, the partial pay, because it's what it is I can't pay the IRS everything I owe them over 72 months. The number is just too large, and so all I can pay them is what I can, how much money I have. And so, but this gets to be very complicated in that the IRS is going to do a full financial investigation of you. So they're going to ask you for your pay stubs. They're going to ask you for all of your bank statements, substantiation on what you pay for all of your expenses. So there's lots of paperwork. It takes a long time to put this stuff together. And then you have to propose, well, this is how much I think I can pay. As you might suspect, the IRS thinks you can pay more than you think you can pay. and so I think, and one of the big problems here is when people get involved in this, whether it's a streamlined or this partial or full pay, is that the IRS doesn't tell you all what the rules are, and they try to use that against you. So, for instance, if I owe the IRS, let's say you owe them $7,200, and I call the IRS, and I can do an installment agreement for the streamline for $100 a month. But the IRS will put you on the spot and they'll say, well, how much can you pay a month? And you're going to be afraid of the IRS, and you're going to say, I can pay $500 a month. And the IRS says, okay, you're going to pay $500 a month, even though you could have paid $100 a month. And even you probably stretched your budget because you haven't really looked at it. And so you didn't do the investigation. And so you think you could pay $500, but then when it comes time to pay it, you don't have the money to pay $500 a month. And so that makes it very difficult for them. So that's why you can't let yourself put yourself in front of the IRS without thinking about it first, and that's what happens to a lot of people. But the partial pay, again, sometimes what I often tell people when they ask me, can you get the IRS to take less than I owe? And my answer often is, I can't.
Yes, but for one of your children.
That's right. But the answer is, I often can't change what you owe the IRS, but sometimes I can change what you pay the IRS, and that's really what people are concerned about. How much can I pay? And because if I'm only doing a partial installment agreement, it may be that at the end of the day, I only pay pennies on the dollar, and I hate to use that term but I pay less than I owe. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. And so, but again, you keep going back and forth with the IRS on a partial installment agreement. But again, there's lots of investigation, a lot of scrutiny. They're going to review exactly where you are. And the last kind is what they call a full pay. And a full pay sounds just what it sounds like, is that you're going to pay everything that you owe them. You're just not going to pay them in installments. And again, there's going to be a full investigation. If you owe more than $50,000, they're going to ask you for all of those documents that I talked about in the partial pay, and they're going to try to get you to pay as much per month as they can. So you might say, well, I can pay them over 72 months, and if your numbers show that you can pay them in 3 years, well, then they're only going to give you 3 years to pay. And so that's why you need help to make sure that you... That's
why somebody should come. The minute that you find out that you get your first letter, people should come to a local attorney such as yourself.
Exactly.
And why would that be?
Exactly. Because,
how would they get in touch with you if they wanted to?
Well, if you get a letter from the IRS and they're telling you owe money, first, if they're trying to audit you, get some help before the audit. Don't wait till after the audit. And I think we talked about that a couple of weeks ago about an audit and how this works. But don't wait for the audit to be complete before you start looking for help. But if they tell you owe money, you should call an attorney, and you should call me at 312-664-6649.
6649. There were 6 things. Did we make it through all 6?
Yeah, I mentioned all 6 things. You can visit my website at Chicago Tax Team, because if you get letters, you're going to have a lot of questions. A lot of those questions are going to be answered on the website, on the blog, on the IRS Radio Hour site.
Or if you have a question,
you can send me an email at questions@irsradiohour.com, and I'll answer your question. And if you want a phone call answered, call me. I'll answer your question on a phone call.
Or you can listen to this show on Sundays at 5 on AM 560.
That's right. We're here every Sunday, and I try to answer all the
answer, because this is the answer.
This is.
So what we've learned is that installments that you don't have to pay right away, but you need help and you need to know what to do. So
Exactly.
Stay right there. We're coming right back.
Hi, I'm Stephen Leahy, and for me, success comes when I help other people. That's why I became an attorney. I know the economy has taken a financial toll on many families and businesses, but I believe that they can recover from their financial problems if they just get the right help. I'm here in Chicago, and I know that if people improve their financial situation, they improve their lives, and I want to help. If the IRS is attacking you with liens, levies, or garnishments, if your mortgage company has threatened foreclosure, or collectors' calls are driving you mad, you need help. We listen to your financial situation, find out what's really going on, and develop a workable solution. Remember, I'm right here in Chicago, and your first visit is completely free and confidential. I will tell you on the spot what can be done and what it will cost. If you are looking for help, you've come to the right place. Call me, Stephen Leahy, at 312-664-6649. Again, that's 312-664-6649. Or visit us on the web at chicagotaxteam.com. Call me today.
You're listening to the IRS Radio Hour with attorney Stephen Leahy on AM 560, The Answer. Attorney Stephen Leahy brings his passion and expertise to your radio each and every week during the IRS Radio Hour. Tune in, take notes, and be educated. Learn your options resolving financial obstacles that face so many. And now, back to the IRS Radio Hour with your host, attorney Stephen Leahy.
Welcome back. I am your host, attorney Stephen Leahy, and this is the IRS Radio Hour on AM 560, The Answer.
Well, Steve, we're coming up to our weekly segment, our weekly saga of
As the IRS Turns.
Yes, this week I thought I would, I usually name off a list of senators who are on the wall of shame. I believe this all started with Senator Dick Durbin. I want to go back to the beginning and where this started, and I want to kind of so that you people could follow along on why. But this is Dick Durbin being very snide.
I can just tell you flat out why I did it, because that Crossroads organization was boasting about how much money they were raising as a 501c4. Let's get back to the basics. Citizens United really unleashed hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations seeking tax-exempt status to play in political campaigns. The law we wrote as Congress said that they had to exclusively be engaged in social welfare and not politics and campaigning. And so here is the IRS trying to decide whether or not these organizations really comply with the law. Crossroads was Exhibit A.
Let me tell you something. It's not up to the IRS to decide what's free speech and what's not free speech. The IRS is an arm of the government, but it's not up to them. Now, the fact is Dick Durbin here is not telling you the truth. Whether he speaks slowly and sounds very nice or not, a 501c4 is allowed just by the fact that the Supreme Court said it was legal.
Well, that's what Citizens United said.
Yeah, that it's legal. So the fact is 501c4 is allowed to be up to 50% using it, not specifically at a candidate, but you could use it for issues and political reasons. Now, we have a new spinoff of the saga. And it seems that
because we're going away from the IRS coming after for 501c3, C4 organizations, which they were targeting conservatives. So now there was a recent settlement in a lawsuit with the Freedom from Religion organization.
Freedom from Religion.
That's right. And they brought a lawsuit against the IRS, and the IRS had a settlement, and the settlement said that they were going to target certain organizations.
Well, we're not sure what the settlement is. As a matter of fact, there was the Attorney General of Oklahoma, Mr. Scott Pruitt, this week kind of laid it out for us. So let's go with that.
Well, that's the traditional view, and you cited it, Shannon, is under the Johnson Amendment that a pastor can't endorse from the pulpit a candidate endorsement. There's a concern that this has now reached content, that if a pastor engages in scriptural teaching around the sanctity of life or the sanctity of marriage, that this organization believes that is considered electioneering or politicking under the IRS code and has referred it to enforcement to the IRS. If this settlement reaches that level, that is a wholly new level of enforcement, and we need to know about that, because that shouldn't be something done in secret. I mean, Shannon, the other issue is that litigation, when you have settlement, you can't regulate through litigation. You can't adopt rules through litigation. If the IRS has adopted new protocol, that's considered rulemaking under the Administrative Procedures Act, and they can't do that through a lawsuit. They have to go through open processes, notice and comment. So there are concerns here about the process, but also whether this group has achieved a victory as they've held it to get into content beyond candidate endorsement.
This is a big problem because, again, this is just, to target certain groups. So if the IRS gets to
Funny how this is the same kind of groups, conservative groups.
That's right.
Pro-life, pro-marriage.
You know, Jeremiah Wright's group isn't mentioned. No. They're not going after Jeremiah Wright's group. I don't see him in Operation Push. I mean, you got that's on television. One of the big organizations that they're talking about is the Archdiocese in Milwaukee.
And the Archdiocese of Chicago.
Well, you know, where they came up, and one of the examples they use is that on the pulpit, so, you know, they said we can't endorse any candidates. If there's a candidate out there that's not pro-life, you shouldn't, as a Catholic, support that candidate. And so he never said which candidate he should support, but this Freedom from Religion group said, you see, that means that he was supporting Mitt Romney, so you have to make a leap to who he was. So even though the church didn't say which candidate, would be violation,
unless you're in a Democratic church, then you're allowed to say whatever you want.
That's right. Then you can have them come up.
Well, you got to remember the Johnson Act. This is Lyndon B. Johnson. So this has been in the book since the 50s. It's never been challenged. I believe that this better be challenged now. I see this is this selective enforcement that we've been worried about.
Well, this is part of the IRS saga in that they keep expanding their their range and who they're targeting based on politics, and politics based on who the administration is.
Well, no, I don't think that they do this for. I mean, like I said, today's 40 years that Richard Nixon left. Richard Nixon asked them, and they said no.
I mean, I agree. If the IRS is targeting you, then you should give me a call. 312-664-6649. Visit the website, ChicagoTaxTeam.com.
Or you can listen to us on Sunday nights at 5 at AM 560.
The answer. That's correct.
Or what?
Or you can see the videos.
And you can watch the videos. Meet us on the other side.
Hi, I'm Stephen Leahy, a local Chicago attorney. I believe that God has given each of us unique abilities, and we are to use those abilities to help others. I have helped hundreds of Chicagoans recover from financial disaster. And if the IRS is threatening you with liens, levies, or garnishments, or you have years of unfiled tax returns, I want to help you. Compliance is the first step to resolving your IRS problem, and compliance begins with your 2013 taxes. Are you ready? If you call now, make an appointment, and visit my office for a free confidential consultation, we will complete your personal 2013 tax return at no charge, even if you don't hire me to resolve your IRS problem. Remember, I'm a local Chicago attorney. Investigate me. Simply Google Stephen with a V, Leahy, Leahy, reviews to find out what the Better Business Bureau and others have said. Or call me at 312-664-6649. Again, that's 312-664-6649. Visit us on the web at ChicagoTaxTeam.com. Call me today.
Welcome back to the IRS Radio Hour with attorney Stephen Leahy. Stephen has helped hundreds of Chicagoans recover from financial disaster, and he wants to help you and your family. There are resolutions, and you will hear about all those resolutions during today's informative discussion on the IRS Radio Hour on AM 560 The Answer. Now, here's your host, attorney Stephen Leahy.
Welcome back. I am your host, attorney Stephen Leahy, and this is the IRS Radio Hour on AM 560 The Answer.
Well, Steve, we are in the section of the question from the listener questions. Mm-hmm. And funny how the listener question seems to go along. It's very cool that it's going along with the blogs.
Well, I agree with that. And, obviously.
I don't know about cool, but I think it's okay.
It's cool to me. And, and I am the definition of cool.
Yeah.
So that I would know what's cool and what's not. My sons often think that I'm the coolest.
Yeah, I bet they do.
Because we sit around the table and talk about IRS issues all the time. My boys are really interested. Okay, so this is I do get a lot of questions, and we picked this question this week because it does go with the blog, and it happens a lot because we help people resolve their IRS problems, and a service that we provide, we call it the IRS Protection Plan, because what happens is you resolve your IRS problem, and then it resurfaces in 2 years, in a year or 2 years, especially if you're in an installment agreement, because this is going to take over, might take 5 years, might take 6 years now, because there are 72 months, these new installment agreements. And so lots of things can happen that all of a sudden you get a letter in the mail that says, you know what, you're in default and we're back in collections. We're going to go after your bank accounts. We're going to go after your pay. We're going to go after everything that you own.
Don't they ever give up?
They never give up.
They're so mean.
They never give up, and they are mean, and they never give up. And so for instance, if I'm in an installment agreement, or even and I'm going to include this because even if I'm in an offer and compromise, if I did an offer and compromise, part of the agreement, because remember that it's called an installment agreement, and an offer and compromise is an agreement that they're agreeing to take less than you owe, and part of the agreement is that you're going to stay in compliance. And compliance, as you may recall, means...
There's that word again.
That's right. And compliance means, as you may recall, means I'm going to pay my taxes on time and I'm going to file my tax returns on time. And what typically happens is I'll get a call and someone they have received a letter that says that they're in default. They say, well, I've been paying my installment agreement. How can I be in default? And I'll ask them, well, did you file your tax return? Well, no, but I did file an extension. Well, there you go. I'm in default because I did not file my taxes on time as I have promised. And it's the same with an offer in compromise. So they've agreed to take less than you owe. And part of the agreement is for the next several years
is that you live up to the agreement.
You're going to pay your taxes and file on time. That's part of the agreement. So I've had people come to me after they've had a wonderful offer in compromise where the IRS agreed to take much less than they owed, and they just didn't file their taxes the next year because they figured they're behind. That whole problem, IRS problem, that's behind me. I don't have to worry about it anymore. And so they might file an extension, and then they're in default of that offer in compromise. And the next thing they know, the IRS is coming after them again. And
for the original amount, or
for the original amount,
would you have to go through? So what you're saying is that you have to go through the whole thing again.
Absolutely.
Do they have to pay the lawyer for that again?
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Absolutely. Now again, we have the IRS protection plan where we try to protect people from this happening, because you know I can tell you 100 times, I could put it in writing, and we do, and the IRS puts it in writing and sends it to you and tells you all of this. But once it's like big relief. I'm finished with the IRS and I'm going to resolve it, and you forget about the specifics of the agreement, and next thing you know, you find yourself in default. And another reason why people find themselves in default is if I'm in a partial installment agreement, or again in currently not collectible status, the IRS every 2 years is going to come in and ask me, are you still in default? I mean, are you still in currently not collectible status? Are you making more money now? Can you pay us more? And they're going to they want to reestablish what you're making and to see if you can increase how much you're paying them, because they don't want you to have a partial payment. They want it all.
Yeah, they want that's their job. And your job is to make sure that somebody can pay what they can pay.
That's right, and then to keep them in compliance. Again, this might go on 5-6 years, and you have to be vigilant in keeping in compliance. And so that means keeping in contact with your attorney and making sure that you're following all the rules. So whatever it has to do with taxes, you should come back and talk to your attorney who resolved that issue for you, and ask him.
What you're saying is you have this plan. They stay on the plan. Is that something that makes sure that you keep following up with them? Or?
That's right. And actually, the IRS protection plan that we offer, we prepare your taxes every year, so we know that you're in compliance. So if we're preparing your taxes, we're going to tell you, hey, you got to get this in by April 15th, because if you don't, there's dire consequences. You have to get it in on time.
So you help them, like you hold their hand almost all the way through the whole agreement.
Absolutely. And again, a big part of it is
that's why it's important to have
that's
why it's important to have a local attorney who understands the rules.
That's right. And what happens with a lot of these outfits is that they get you they put you in currently not collectible, or they get you an installment agreement, and then they wash your hands of you,
and then you're gone. Well, if someone needed this kind of
that's right. So were you in an installment agreement? Did the IRS cancel it for some reason? Then you should call me. Even if you had someone else help you with the installment agreement to begin with, you should still call my office at 312-664-6649. You can visit us on the web at chicagotaxteam.com.
And they can also listen to us on Sundays.
That's right.
At 5, every Sunday at 5. That's right. On AM 560.
And also remember, this segment is going to be on a video. So if you had questions about how an installment agreement works, go look at the video, and it'll give you a lot of information.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Stephen Leahy, and for me, success comes when I help other people. That's why I became an attorney. I know the economy has taken a financial toll on many families and businesses, but I believe that they can recover from their financial problems if they just get the right help. I'm here in Chicago, and I know that if people improve their financial situation, they improve their lives, and I want to help. If the IRS is attacking you with liens, levies, or garnishments, if your mortgage company has threatened foreclosure, or collectors' calls are driving you mad, you need help. We listen to your financial situation, find out what's really going on, and develop a workable solution. Remember, I'm right here in Chicago, and your first visit is completely free and confidential. I will tell you on the spot what can be done and what it will cost. If you are looking for help, you've come to the right place. Call me, Stephen Leahy, at 312-664-6649. Again, that's 312-664-6649. Or visit us on the web at chicagotaxteam.com. Call me today.
You're listening to the IRS Radio Hour with attorney Stephen Leahy on AM 560, The Answer. Attorney Stephen Leahy brings his passion and expertise to your radio each and every week during the IRS Radio Hour. Tune in, take notes, and be educated. Learn your options resolving financial obstacles that face so many. And now, back to the IRS Radio Hour with your host, Attorney Stephen Leahy.
We are back on the IRS Radio Hour. I am your host, Attorney Stephen Leahy, and this is AM 560, The Answer. Now, I saw this Freedom from Religion. I think this is the group that had last year in Daily Plaza, they had a big A in the plaza. We don't celebrate Christmas, but we want to be represented. I didn't understand it then. I certainly don't understand it now. Well, we don't believe in Christmas, but we want our...
I want a big A there. Well, what does that mean?
That's why there's a big plaque there that told me. I took pictures of it last year because I couldn't believe it. Like, what do you have to be here for Christmas for? I don't get it. I can understand the menorah because they celebrate around that same time, and that makes sense. But an A to say I don't believe and I'm not celebrating.
See, if I was one of them, I'd go get a golden calf or something and put it there. Simon, don't listen. I'm only kidding.
That would actually be really good.
It'd be funny.
That's right.
That's funny.
And better than the A. It would be the golden calf. Awesome.
That is awesome.
Maybe Moses would come down and shame them.
Well, this has been a great week. We got to the show, and the IRS is like you said, it's like a cancer. It's going into different parts of. This is what we were warning you about. Mm-hmm. It's going into different parts of your life. I mean, now all of a sudden they're gonna. These are people. They'll be
sitting in the pulpit with you, determining what you said.
Yeah, well, see, now we're not sure. Though this is one of the problems with what we were talking about is we're not sure what the settlement was. If there's a settlement with the government, and the government is us, don't you think we ought to know what the settlement is?
Exactly.
How could they be in a secretive settlement?
This reminds me of a settlement that just reached in Mount Prospect at Ye Old Town Inn. Used to drink there.
Well, they were quarter beer night.
I used to live. Yeah, that's it. Because he just got a $6.5 million settlement because they tried to bully him out of his property. And he won a big settlement, and it's a secret settlement. They can't reveal it. But then the mayor came out, or a spokesman from Mount Prospect came out and said, well, if there's a Freedom of Information Act request, we have to tell you about it. And then it's, well, why don't you just tell us about it then?
That's what I mean, yeah.
But it's like we're going to pay you $6.5 million, but we're not admitting any liability or wrongdoing.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to think what this means. If they're monitoring the church, that means that there has to be agents in the church, sitting in the pulpits, listening to what this is the First Amendment. The First Amendment says Congress shall make no laws.
It's like the KGB saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" They used to have a KGB agent at every business. What are you doing over there? What do you got over there? What are you doing over there?
It's scary, and this is the reason why we keep bringing this up. The IRS is now going to be in charge of your health care.
That's right.
You ought to be running screaming. This is the most.
I think I said this before. It's like, you didn't give to my campaign last year, did you? Right. And you have cancer. Didn't you say that?
How about that agreement, that installment agreement? Well, I believe you can make a better agreement, don't you? Don't you need a new kidney? You think you can come up with $500 a month to pay off the bill?
Unbelievable.
I need to extend
that. Lots about this healthcare thing that's coming out too, because people are saying, I didn't know the copay, or I have to pay. I'm not paying anything on my premium, but boy, the copay is killing me.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is why we want to bring you up to date, and this is why we need you to know. What I'd also like to know is I didn't pay any attention Friday if the Bears won or not.
I didn't either.
Well, it's not that it matters, but Bears are back on, and I know you're going to have to pick between us and the Bears sometimes, and sometimes it's better to tape the Bears and listen to us, I think.
312, remember, you can always listen to us on the radio. Okay, we stream, so you can always hear it after the fact. But join us every week. I want to thank Debbie for her help.
Thank you, Debbie.
Terrific.
Court, great party you had yesterday.